there are a lot of irons in the fire, and we're just continuing to press forward. And I think it's like how a football coach would tell a running back that you hit the pile, you have to keep your feet moving. You have to keep your feet moving. You do, and good things, they just happen when we're in the place, when we're in the position where we're supposed to be. Good things they just happen.
Well, following you during the COVID-19 pandemic, people all across our nation got to see organizations stand up and serve their communities and their fellow citizens in ways that likely had not been seen in generations. It was an honor here in Oklahoma City to have had the opportunity to witness some of those organizations stand up and serve. And speaking of honors, it's an honor to have the leader of one of those organizations here on the Thousand Stories podcast today. Pastor Derrick Scobey is here from Ebenezer Baptist Church in Northeast Oklahoma City. And they are a true example of a group of people who saw a need and decided to stand up and do something about it. So thank you, Pastor Scobey, for being here and joining me today. It is truly a pleasure to not only have you here today, but also to consider you a friend and a partner in the work that we do. I would love to have you take a moment and introduce yourself, maybe more than a moment. There is depth to you and your background personally that I think brings you to the work that you do and is part of the reason that you are such a dedicated public servant. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, first of all, thank you, Director Brown, for the invitation to come and be here with you, my friend, and to be able to share with your listening audience. Yes, I do believe there are some things in my background that certainly correlates to my being here at this time and place to be the servant that I do believe that God has called me to be in this community as a whole. I grew up at Northeast 21st in Kelly, probably literally three stones throws away from the governor's mansion. We could walk there in about 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half with a little jog. We would often go through a little trail behind the governor's mansion, and we would watch the helicopter that would land and take off there. I don't think you can walk through that trail anymore, but just fond memories of being right around in this area. I've never been in this building, the Sequoia building, but I would be around in this area just a lot growing up. I grew up, was born to a single mother. I had three older sisters, and my father, he was one of the second waves of African-American police officers here in Oklahoma City, starting around 1952 when he joined the force, and until his death. He was on the force until 81, and then with the sheriff's department after that until he passed in 85. But again, single mother. My father, he was married to another woman. I was a hidden secret until the night before he passed, December 27th, 1985. We grew up on welfare and food stamps. I've shared this story a couple of times, even in your presence, and I've only had one person know what I was talking about with these 3 hole punches per month on the welfare prescription card. That's what we were allocated. $218 welfare for my mother and I, $120 in food stamps. Often our gas, our lights would get cut off, our water, but I had the water key so I could go turn the water back on temporarily. But it was rough, no doubt, growing up. But I'm grateful for that, because there also were many people who came alongside of my mother to help. My mother was a chronic asthmatic. She literally really could not work toward the end of her life. She was able to receive disability, but it really should have been years before. But she did not have anyone to advocate really on her behalf. But we grew up. There was a strong work ethic that was instilled in us growing up. Although she did not work a traditional job, she worked hard around that house. It was a clean house. Always food was prepared, and she took very good care of us, and she made sure that we had a strong work ethic, and I thank God for that. I graduated high school in 1985 from Douglas High School. I went to Northwest Classen for about a year, but graduated Douglas, and shortly after that worked a little bit here, actually on the Northeast side, and then I went to Central State University, which we know now as UCO. Fast forward to probably around 88, 89, I started a business. I was in the jewelry business. Did that for several years. And then I got into the car business. So I was a salesman for many years, and was pretty good at it.
I can see that. I promise.
I was always
can see that.
the top salesman,
absolutely.
and then that was started in '94. In '96, I came to faith in Christ. Shortly thereafter, about 2 weeks later, the Lord took me to Dallas, Texas. I was not planning on moving to Dallas, Texas, but there I was in Dallas. I joined a church down there and really kind of came up in the faith there. Went to work at a dealership called Leadership Ford. It was owned by a guy named Alan Lukehart, who was born and raised here in Oklahoma City. And he had moved to Dallas along with some other guys and started this Ford dealership, and was there and just did a lot of ministry there in the marketplace, even though I was there working in a secular manner, but I also was there in a spiritual manner to serve the people that was there. One of the things that I certainly count as a joy and honor, Alan Lukehart, the owner of the dealership, his mother passed, Ruth Wales Lukehart, and he asked me to preach her homegoing service at Prestonwood Baptist Church. And so was there for several years, actually almost a decade, really a decade. And then Alan, he sold the dealership to Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman came in shortly after. Alan, he went home. He just retired. And Troy asked me to move from sales. Now, I was a guy who would sell 25, 30 cars a month, sometimes 35 or so. He asked me to move from sales to a used car director position. It was certainly an honor for, at that point in time, a future Hall of Fame quarterback, an Oklahoma, not native, but almost native, to ask me to do that. And I took that challenge, did very well with that. And a few years later, I actually started a church in McKinney, Texas. So I was in McKinney at this point in time, and I planted a church in McKinney, Texas. Went to work for a guy who had a large company there in McKinney. He had about 100 employees, asked me to oversee the operations of that company. I did that while I was pastoring. He also forced me to go through Leadership McKinney. I had no desire to do it, but he pushed me to do it, and it was one of the best decisions ever. Because there I met a dear friend. He's from Oklahoma originally. His name is Chris Stoll. He was the executive pastor at the First Baptist Church of McKinney. a 5,000 member. I like to talk in the context I like to talk in at different points. I will say African American, different points Caucasian. So I'm going to say now a 5,000 member, primarily Caucasian Southern Baptist church, about 97%. And they asked me, he and the lead pastor, Dr. Richard Mark Lee, asked me to come and preach there just on a Sunday morning at both of their services. I did that. Shortly thereafter, they asked, would me and my congregation consider moving on the campus of First Baptist McKinney? We talked about that, prayed about that. We did. The church had exponential growth. We were probably about an 80% African-American church, 15% Caucasian, 5% other. We moved on the campus as an autonomous church, and the numbers inverted to about an 80% Caucasian church, 15% African-American, 5% others, and had exponential growth, grew from about 100 folks to about 700 within a year. And also within that year, they asked, First Baptist asked, would I consider coming on staff as the first African-American senior teaching pastor in their 140-year history, and then to merge with them. We prayed about it. We talked about that. And over a period of about 90 days, that's what we did. And I just, there in McKinney, learned so much. We would once a year, we would take about 400 to 600 people from First Baptist to the east side of McKinney, which the east side of McKinney looked a lot like the east side of Oklahoma City, the northeast side of Oklahoma City. And we would go over and we would do these massive cleanup projects, and we would do home rehab and things of that nature. And just, I think I always had a servant's heart, but I really found my niche there at First Baptist McKinney.
So that was sort of your first experience in these sort of big community service projects.
No doubt.
Yep.
That was it right there in McKinney, Texas. So that's it. And then 6 years ago, came back to Oklahoma City to pastor I didn't come back to pastor the Ebenezer Baptist Church. I came back with hopes to pastor the Ebenezer Baptist Church, but I was going to plant a church regardless. But it worked out to where I became the pastor at Ebenezer.
Fantastic, and that's where we pick up the story. I was in a meeting with you, I don't know, a month or so ago at Ebenezer Baptist Church. We broke bread together and we had a conversation with about 15 other people. And you started talking about this concept of your yes being on the table. I've used that term in the last month probably a dozen times. And every time I use it, I always give you credit. I always say that's Pastor Scobey's term. But you spoke passionately about this concept of being available for your community and as a partner whenever somebody comes to you. And that was really, it struck me. And I know that it struck the other people in the meeting because I've actually had a few of those people reach out to me and say something subsequent to it. So I would love to understand from your perspective what your yes being on the table means.
Well, thank you for that. And let me try to expound on that a little bit more. My yes being on the table certainly is my yes being on the table for God and anything I sense Him leading me to do. What my yes is not on the table for always would be for people trying to lead me to what they want me to do, because we do have a lot of people that come to us about a lot of things, and I am the type of person. This is the picture that I paint often. If you are sitting on the front porch in your rocking chair drinking lemonade, and I'm not talking about you're 80 years old, you're just sitting there relaxing, and you want me to do all the work for you, it ain't gonna happen. I know I said ain't. it makes for good emphasis. Incorrect, but it's just that's not going to happen. We live in a world where often people want you to do everything for them, and I'm not going to do it. But when I sense the Lord leading me to do something, well, He knows my yes is just on the table. Whatever it is, and if I know that He's calling for me to do that, I'm going to do it. That's just, it's no ifs and buts about it. So I think this yes being on the table through this pandemic really started back in I would say June or no, actually more like April. We did a cheeseburger basket giveaway. We raised I don't know, maybe $2,000, and we took it to Jeff at Geronimo's bakery, and we say bakery. They bake
I've been to
donuts,
Geronimo's,
but the cheeseburgers and the ham and cheese sandwiches, yeah, they've been around a long time, actually 50 plus years. But we took that over there and just said, hey, we're going to put something out, and anyone that comes and they want a cheeseburger basket, if you'll just take it out of these funds. One day, a day and a half, that was gone. Then we had a retired nurse that had reached out to me. She does not live here, and she said, hey, great job with, basically what she was saying is, great job with the greasy cheeseburgers, but can you lead an effort for a healthy food giveaway? And she said, if so, she said, I will donate the first $5,000 to it. And, we said yes. And we connected with Crest. They really, in essence, donated, just gave us a deep discount on a lot of the food. We had a friendly, competitive wager between the Millwood Falcons and the Douglas Trojans to raise money to go towards this grocery giveaway. So we did this in collaboration with the Greater New Zion Baptist Church, Pastor Kenneth Sherrill. I believe that was somewhere in the early part of April of 2020. We were able to give out 5 bags of groceries to 284 families. And then we were contacted by a pastor in Chicago, Illinois, John Harrell, who works very closely with World Vision. And he was telling us about this USDA Farmers to Food Box program, and he connected us with Reed Slattery, who's the national director for the U.S. programs of World Vision. And he was telling us about all these trucks that were going to come to Oklahoma City, to Ebenezer, and all the things we'd be able to do. And it sounded almost unbelievable, but within about 2 to 3 weeks, those trucks started coming. And throughout the pandemic, we were able to distribute some $3.5 billion worth of food, not just to the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City, but really certainly our county as a whole. But then also we would take about once a month a trailer load of food down to Clearview, Oklahoma, which Clearview is one of the original 13 black towns, and most of those black towns are in that area. There's another in Tatum, Oklahoma. Then we know Langston, and we also were able to connect with those 2 towns. But we would take a trailer load of food to Clearview, and then we would have 11 other black towns that would come. Now, when I say black towns, they were all black towns 100 plus years ago. Now residing in those towns are black people, white people, Native American, Hispanic, etc. But most of those towns are very impoverished. So we were able to serve those towns, and then other parts of Oklahoma as well. But then, so the yes was on the table there, and we were receiving 3 trailer loads, 53-foot trailer loads of food, which was about 1,100 plus boxes per trailer. So typically in a week's time, we would receive 3,300 plus boxes of food, get those distributed. It takes a lot of finance to do it because you have to advertise for people to know that you have this. And then we would deliver food to other areas of Oklahoma as well, and then renting forklifts and all type of things of that nature. But it takes a lot of volunteers to do that. But we kept our yes on the table. We did that throughout the summer. August the 25th, I received a call from Alicia Kemper with World Vision out of the Grand Prairie Hub asking could we take, in addition to the 3 trailer loads of food that we were going to receive that week, another 5 trailer loads of food. Because at that time the hurricanes were down south and they couldn't get the trucks to where they needed to get them, and then the food was going to spoil. So I said yes, we'll take them. So we received those trailers, and we had about 9,000 boxes of food in over a 124-hour period that we distributed during that time. Now we sent some of those trailers to Spencer, Oklahoma. We sent one to Clearview, Oklahoma. Several, obviously, to Ebenezer. We sent one to Ardmore, Oklahoma. So we distributed a lot of food to a lot of people over that time. And then about a week later, I received a call from Reed Slattery, the national director, asking would I like for him to send us a trailer load of home furniture and home furnishings. I didn't understand what it was. I mean, that's a simple statement to make. It sounds clear enough, but a 53-foot trailer of furniture and home furnishings, I don't understand this. And I said yes. It was coming from Seattle, Fife, Washington, right outside of Seattle. So he sent that about 4 or 5 days later, and it was probably $125,000 to $150,000 worth of home furniture and home furnishings. There were 20,000 pairs of Bombas socks. So I mean, if you figure $2 a pair, it's $40,000 in socks. But then you had sofas and love seats and dining room tables and just all sorts of things, air fryers, and we were able to distribute those items to the community as a whole. And when I say the community, I don't mean just the Northeast Oklahoma City community. We've had some people that have said things. Again, I'm just very transparent. The only way I know how to be. We've had some people that have said throughout the pandemic that it should have just, because we're here on the Northeast side in an African American context, cultural context as our church, that it should have just been for Black people. Well, that's just the most ridiculous, foolish thing I've ever heard. And I've heard several people say that. But 2 things. One, if I look at it from a biblical standpoint, it would be to help all. It would be to help all. But then also, because of our partnership with World Vision, it's 2 key words there: world vision. So we and this is just who we are, to serve everyone. So we were able to do that, and then Reed and Quincy Walker, who oversees the site in Grand Prairie, and a couple of others from World Vision came to do a site visit. And it was during the ice storm. And we had a giveaway during the ice storm. We got a call from, I won't even go into who, but I got a call, and they just said, we have a trailer of food. And where we were sending it, they're closed because of the ice. And we sent it somewhere else about 2 hours north of Oklahoma City. It's closed because of the ice. Can you all take it? Our yes was on the table. We said yes. We received the food in an ice storm. Now, the ice was already on the ground. It wasn't any more falling. But we were able to distribute that food in about 3 hours. I asked them, I said, when is it coming? They said in about 30 minutes. And we received it, and we were able to get it distributed. Now, representatives from World Vision, they were here at that time. So they really kind of got a chance to see us in action. And it was just phenomenal to see all that happened there. So that was the last week of October, and at that time, we opened the church I spoke to Chief Gorley, and we discussed using Ebenezer as an emergency shelter. So we opened the church. We had about 100 people cycle through, and we had people from our church that actually was there. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Walker and his wife Danielle, they stayed there all week long. I stayed there all week long in order for us to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the people who were there in the church. I mean, it was really something to see. And then at that same time, we received notice. I'd gotten a call from a reporter in England who wanted to interview one of our church members. And so as I talked to him, I figured out what it was, and I let him know. I said, hey, I talked to her, and I said, hey, she doesn't want to talk to you because she has figured out this was a big joke. So she was recruited a year before, Janice Jones, to play a role in a documentary that was only going to be seen in some third world country that we would never see. She was recruited out of Ebenezer. People just drove by Ebenezer, stopped at Ebenezer, and they were looking for a quote-unquote black grandmother to play a role in this documentary. She did it. We were praying for this little girl who was just going through some god-awful things. And then a year later, we got a call from this reporter, and he said to me, Pastor, we found out about 15 minutes before that she was not in a documentary. She was in a movie, the Borat subsequent movie film. And so the reporter was, after I told him, I said, she doesn't want to talk to you because it's just a big joke. He said, I don't know if you have Twitter, he said, but she's trending on Twitter. And he said, you might want to look. He said, people, they are calling her a hero because there's no person that has ever gone through one of these movies of Sacha Baron Cohen's who have come out, smelling like a rose. I'll just say that. But she did. Mm-hmm. She did just because of her moral fiber and who she is as a person. And so all this is going on during this ice storm. We're at the church. Janice is there at the church. Several other church members are there. And about, 100 people in and out. So Sacha Baron Cohen, he calls Janice. So we go into this other area because of so much noise going on. So we're talking to him, we're talking to his producer, and just kind of sharing, he was sharing his apologies for not letting her know. He said, but if I'd have let you know, you wouldn't have responded the same. So long story short, he said, hey, I want to send something to an organization in your community that's going to help the community. And she said, he said, I heard you have an ice storm. So she said, well, the organization that I know that's helping the community is my church, which we're an organism. But I talked to him for probably about 5 minutes, and I let him know what we were doing at that very moment inside of the church with the people. And then I did a video, and I sent it to him. And then that night, his executive producer, she called me, and she said, hey, he was going to send $10,000 to just to help. She said, but when he saw the video, he decided he was going to send $100,000. And that was a big story that Carla Hinton and others had wrote about Channel 4 about that. But that really put us in a position to even do more than what we had been doing. But our yes kept it just stayed there on the table throughout December. We had this simultaneous food box giveaway at Ebenezer, one in Wellston, one at Quill Springs Baptist. You came and served with us at that time. Governor Stitt came and served with us, and just several others. And we were able, I think we had about 5,000 food boxes, and then we had a couple of trailer loads of furniture and home furnishings and things of that nature. December, we had a Hope Center that was behind us, and then we had a Hope Center there at Ebenezer that I think probably just a month before you and I had met and talked about some other things, but then some way we started talking about having a Hope Center there at the church, and we did that, and then we approached you about a basketball court and playground back behind the church on the Ebenezer property through some CARES Act funding to be there for those kids. I just left the church, and literally there were about 40 kids out there playing there on that playground and the basketball court.
So it's important to share with our listeners just a little bit about what Hope Centers are, because I think it also shares the depth of the level of service that you provided during that time. So a Hope Center was a platform that the state built in response to COVID-19, where we worked with partners to wrap resources around kids and families during the pandemic. So that allowed for kids when school was out to go to a Hope Center to receive help with education, getting sort of set up on the online learning platform. There was mental health resources, there were food resources. So really all of those ways that kids specifically in low-income communities needed to or had always relied on the supports of their school. When schools closed, the Hope Centers were able to provide that. But the key is having really great partners whose yes was on the table. And so you served lots of kids in lots of different ways that would have likely not had service before. And so I am personally thankful for your standing up during that time.
Well, thank you. And I, we, because we're sitting on about 14 acres, it was just a spot at the back of the church, just some plot of ground back there that worked out perfectly.
And it allowed those kids to play outside during a pandemic when you couldn't necessarily be inside all of the time. Right. I mean, we were concerned about virus control and all of that, but it's beautiful to see that some of those resources were able to extend beyond the time of the CARES Act itself.
That's right.
We used it during the CARES Act, but it serves now to this day.
Even after that, in January, we got a little rest, not for the entire month, but a portion of that month, and then phase 5 of this USDA Farmers to Food Box program started, and for some odd reason, we were not included. Really, no churches in Oklahoma County were included. And leading up to this, we had become one of only, I believe, 2 churches that had continued, or really nonprofits that had continued with this Farmers to Food Box program. And people, they were still in deep need, and they still are in deep need. But when phase 5 started, they told us the supplier, the distributor out of Tulsa, said that we were not going to receive any of the food boxes, and really no one around here was going to receive any. So at that time, I reached out to Congresswoman Bice, and then reached out to Governor Stitt's office through Von Payne. And so Governor Stitt's office reached out to Go Fresh out of Tulsa, and then Congresswoman Bice, she reached out to the USDA about this, and literally a few days later, we received a call saying that they were going to send trucks our way again, and it happened. So it was great. One of the highlights throughout the pandemic really was January January the 15th, somewhere in there, I received a text message from Dr. Julie Watson at Integris, asking would I consider partnering with them for a vaccination pod. Now we know that now we are at a time where you can go receive a vaccine really anywhere, any day. But at that time, you could not. I mean, it was hard to navigate through the portal to get an appointment. I mean, it was very difficult. So I told her yes. We met. So the yes was there on the table. We met. A couple of weeks after that, my wife, Angela, who has been just a tremendous support through this entire pandemic, because there's just been a lot of time that's been away from home. I was at the church up until a few weeks ago. I was at the church every single day other than 3 days, and that was over a period of about 13 months. Wow. Every day other than 3 days. It was 2 of those I went fishing. But so I met with Dr. Watson at Integris. They were having a vaccination pod there. So it was my wife, Angela, Cam Cox, our videographer from the church, and Dr. John Reed, the pastor of Fairview Baptist Church. And we were just kind of looking at the way it was set up, and they decided, hey, we're going to send 1,130 vaccines to you all. And the thought was, are we going to be able to administer, 1,100 plus vaccines? Well, by the grace of God, we were able to vaccinate 1,114 people that day, and they did not have to navigate through that portal. We did it, as the front page of Oklahoma said, old school. People were able to call a phone number. They were able to text the phone number. They were able to sign up through Sign Up Genius. They were able to come by the church, and we signed them up. But we did any and everything that we could in order to sign people up. Now, Governor Stitt came that day, and I'm quoting him, a little paraphrase, but pretty much quoting him as saying that the vaccination pods around the state of Oklahoma up until that day had been about 2 to 3% African Americans in those vaccination pods, and the pod that we had, it was about 85% plus African American folks. Now, for anyone listening that would think, well, it was just to concern African American people, no, we want to get the vaccine in everyone's arm. But at that point in time, there was a deficiency in our community. People were wanting the vaccine, but they were not. They were just not able to get it. And I'll tell you, I've never shared this publicly, and I'm sure someone will hear it and they'll share it with him. And make sure you share it in the right manner with him. I'm going to tell you one thing that really stood out to me is seeing Mr. John Temple, the owner of Temple and Sons Funeral Home, who is a man of resources, standing outside in the line with everyone else to receive that vaccine at the Ebenezer Baptist Church, January 25th of 2021. It really let me know right then and there that this vaccine was very difficult to get. Now, I don't care who you were, or who, at that time, who you were, it was just difficult to get. And we were able to bring the vaccine right there to the Northeast community and vaccinate 1,114 people. And then subsequently, 3 weeks later, we were scheduled to have the second dose, but then we had the terrible snowstorm, and we had to postpone it about a week out. And then we decided, not we, it was Oklahoma City County Health Department, but it was a great idea. Kara Gluck and her and Blaine Bolden had decided and they talked to me about it and asked my thought, and I thought it was a great idea to have the second shot pod at Douglas along with a first shot pod that was taking place at Douglas because it was a larger space. I mean, we did the best we could do with the space that we had. Again, 1,100 some odd people in one day, and that's not counting all the volunteers because it was about 100 plus volunteers. But we were able to serve a lot of people in a wonderful manner that time. February the 8th, we were offered a truck, trailer load of food, and they said that we would receive it February the 11th. We had not received any of the food trucks in about 2 weeks at that point in time, and I knew what February the 11th, what day that was going to be, and that was the day that it was the weather folks had said it was going to be -8 for a low and 5 degrees for a high. So we could have said no, that we're not going to take the truck that day under those severe weather conditions. But we went ahead and put our yes on the table. Our yes was on the table a few days before that when we took at 9:30 at night about 200 boxes of food to a nursing home out southwest who had a plumbing issue, and they had no food in the nursing home. It was about 8 inches of snow on the ground. We loaded up trailers and we took it to the nursing home at 9:30 at night. Yes was on the table. But following that, with this truck that we received on February the 11th, it was cold. Now, we were dressed for it, no doubt about it. But it took it took a lot of tenacity to be out there, and I want to commend Congresswoman Stephanie Bice, her and several of her folks. They were out there with us. It was -8, and and I have to give her credit. I mean that took a lot.
Absolutely.
But she was out there, and we're grateful. And that day, someone saw us, and they called, and they were like, "Are y'all crazy?" And they donated some usage of a warehouse space to us when they saw us out there. They had been seeing us out there, but not in -8 degree weather, and they donated that space to us. And then starting in February, we really started working a lot closer with DHS, with Oklahoma City Public Schools, homeless, our homeless community, Sunbeam, the Lynn Institute, and others, in providing through World Vision a lot of this furniture and home furnishings to these other organizations who are walking shoulder to shoulder with the most vulnerable population in our community as a whole. So we're able to donate a lot of those items directly to the organizations that I just mentioned, and then those organizations are able to give those items directly to those who are in need. And I think the last thing I want to share about our yes being on the table, I believe it was in March, somewhere in there, maybe April, we received a call from World Vision. They had 3 trailer loads of school supplies. Now, the school supplies had been donated by Feed the Children. They donated it to World Vision. World Vision called me and said, "Hey, do you want these items?" Now, 3 trailer loads of school supplies valued at about $750,000, and our yes was on the table. We received those. We distributed, which we had distributed a lot of items already to Oklahoma City Public Schools and Millwood Public Schools before this, because we've gotten a lot of school supplies. But we were able to donate these items to Oklahoma City Public Schools, Millwood, Crutcho, and Middale, and some other smaller districts as well. But we've just tried to keep our yes on the table and to help in every way that we can.
Wow, that's an incredible list of ways that you and your church have served the community and really the city and even beyond the borders of the city. I'm sitting here struck by that this is really one of the reasons, or the reason that this podcast exists, is that the stories that you just told, the public doesn't know about, and the narrative online and the narrative in our sort of society is one of, corruption and in some cases evil, and that things are not going in the right direction. And this is an opportunity for us to share stories of people who are serving and that the public doesn't see. So thank you for sharing all of those. I know it's not necessarily in your nature to really share all of the incredible things that you've done in your life and over the last year. So I appreciate you sharing those things. I think this one of the things also that struck me as you were talking is you've honored so many other people as you were talking. I mean, and organizations. You've probably said 25 names of other folks and 15 or 20 organizations through that through those minutes that you were just sharing. And to me, it highlighted the need for all of us to build relationship and to build partnerships with one another. And I would love to know just your thoughts generally on the value of partnerships in all of this work. And you've already highlighted a lot, but if there are other partnerships that come to mind.
Well, thank you for. I need to highlight a few more. Pastor Christine Bird, she has really been my right-hand person, out there on that parking lot in the warehouse. A lot of the folks from DHS, the person that they connect with is Christine Bird, and she's been a tremendous blessing, as well as Derrick and John Miller, who's handled really all of the unloading, the forklifts and the trailers and all those type of things. And then, as well as I said earlier, my wife Angela, she's just been such a support through all of this, because there are times where I'm leaving the house at like 5 a.m, literally, and then we finish at like 9 or so at night, and she's never fussed at any of that. She's always been supportive, because she understands that the need is great. But the collaborative efforts, you can't do it alone. Like even right now, we are getting ready to build a large warehouse on our property, and a loading dock, and a 14 by 28 walk-in freezer refrigerator combo that we can receive a large amount of food from different organizations. We don't know all of them at this point, but we've had people who have come alongside of us. Sarah Roberts, Inasmuch Foundation, and Frontline Church, North Church. There have been so many that have come alongside of us to help us in what we're doing. So we wanted to, and I say wanted because that would be past tense. We, early on, before people were coming alongside of us, we were trying to come alongside of other organizations to help them. And now, in turn, there are other organizations that are coming alongside of us. I think it would be a very cyclical type of relationship. It's not always that you do something for one person, that person's going to come around and do something for you. But when you do things for people, regardless of what your religious ideology is or whatever, however it is, it's true. You reap what you sow. I mean, and that's, sometimes we like to say that in a negative way. No, it's in positive ways, And Zig Ziglar, the greatest motivational speaker that ever lived, would often say, if you help enough people in life get what they want, you will always get what you want in life. But if you look at it from a Christian standpoint, give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together. I mean, so however you look at it. Some people, they call it karma, all type of, whatever way you look at it, it all equates to the same. What you do has a way of coming back. Cast your bread upon the water, and after many days it will return unto you. And the late Dr. W.K. Jackson of the St. John Baptist Church, he would often say, and sometimes God will put a little butter, not sometimes, he would say God will put a little butter on that bread when it's coming back to you. So, but the reason that we've done the things that we've done is because the need has been great. We know it's a call from God to do it. The need has been great. And then we have seen where others have come alongside of us to say, hey, let us help you with what you're trying to do with the community outreach component. So you have to have those relationships. I shared right now we're hosting children in a summer program that is with OKYLP that's right behind us, and they're utilizing some of the church's space. And I was sharing with the kids this morning of how in life you have to learn to work together. You have to learn to collaborate. Even if you don't have the best relationship with someone, you have to figure out a way to work together for the greater good of mankind. So,
fantastic. I tell you, as you were talking about the construction of the warehouse on your site there at the church, I really started thinking about, I can't think of other churches, other faith-based partners that we have that have that same level of commitment, that you're actually building something on your site to serve your community, and that's the exclusive reason for it. And to me, it is such a great illustration of the fact that the future for your church is, and for you and for your community, is bright because you have a servant like you, a church like Ebenezer Baptist Church, and the support of your deacons and your trustees. That's right. And I mean, it's not one person that serves in these organizations. It is so many. And so I would love your sort of summary on what the future looks like for Ebenezer Baptist Church. You stood up in the pandemic in a time of great need. There is continued need in the community. Do you have in mind, of course, you've got the building that's underway, but what does the future look like for Ebenezer with regards to service to the community?
Well, so even before the pandemic, we were serving, serving in a deep manner, and we have served, I believe, with a spirit of excellence throughout this season that we've been in, and although I don't know exactly what's in front of us, I've just put our yes on the table with this building, with this, now again, 28 feet by 14 feet walk-in freezer cooler combo and a loading dock. It's almost like the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. I don't know where all the food is coming from. I don't know where all the finance is coming from, but I know it's coming because with having the resources like what we'll have, and we're just waiting for the survey to come back, and then with the application with the city, but prayerfully it'll be up in 60 days. But having those things there, there's no way that we're going to have that there and it's not going to be utilized. Because also, I'm sure there'll be others in the community, we talk about collaboration, that will need somewhere to store food for maybe a week or something like that. Guess what? I mean, we're gonna be there to say, okay, because I believe we'll have enough space for that. But I don't know exactly what it all looks like. Our relationship with World Vision, that's intact. We'll continue to receive the trailer loads of furniture and home furnishing and things of that nature. All those things are brand new items, and we'll be able to serve the community with those things. The Farmers to Food Box program has ended. Now we're in the process of applying to become a partner with Regional Food Bank. So hopefully we'll be able to receive on a monthly or twice a month, even hopefully it'll be that, with them to receive food that we can distribute to the community as a whole. So there are the Needs Foundation. We're connected with the Needs Foundation, who's been providing food to us on top of what we've received from the Farmers to Food Box program for the last 3 or 4 months. So there are a lot of irons in the fire, and we're just continuing to press forward. And I think it's like how a football coach would tell a running back that you hit the pile, you have to keep your feet moving. You have to keep your feet moving. You do, and good things, they just happen when we're in the place, when we're in the position where we're supposed to be. Good things they just happen.
Well, following you online, I can tell your feet are always moving. So for those of you who are listening that want to follow Pastor Derrick Scobey and see the incredible work happening at Ebenezer Baptist Church, he's all over Facebook, Twitter, and so just take a look and find him out there. We'll put links in the body of the podcast here so you can find him there. Is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, you did mention, our church membership as a whole, the deacons, the trustees, our leadership, who have certainly supported all of these efforts over this last year. Someone I did not highlight, and I really need to highlight, and that's Cam Cox. He's our audiovisual guy. He's the guy behind the scenes.
He is a busy man with you.
He really is, and for so many others. Mm-hmm. With Waylon Cubitt, he helps him on Tuesday nights.
I didn't know that.
That's great. Every week does that, and works with a lot of funeral homes. Does a lot of things behind the scenes, but Cam has been the guy who has reached out to the different news stations and things like that, and it really kind of kept us on the forefront of the TV lens, I would say, the camera lens, for folks to see that Ebenezer is really on the move doing some things. Cam has really been the one that has led that effort, so we certainly are very, very thankful for him.
Well, I'm a believer that the church needs to be in the community, not just a building with 4 walls and people inside, but needs to extend outside of the walls of the building and really serve. And so as we wrap up, I really want to just say thank you for your feet always moving, because they are. We try to follow you, and it's great to see you in your community. But even more so as a partner in some of the work that you're doing. Thank you for that yes being on the table. I know that I can call or text, and that yes is there. We have a joint vision in the way that we want to serve, and I'm thankful for your partnership in that.
The last thing I do want to say, thank you to my friend Pastor Herbert Cooper of People's Church. They have recently partnered with us with these endeavors as well that we're doing with World Vision. So we're grateful for a lot of great friends. Quail Springs Baptist Church, they have helped us tremendously with sending volunteers throughout this. So it's just been so many, too many to name, really.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end it, because I do believe that for every bad story you see online, there are 1,000 incredible stories that are actually happening in our communities if you'll just look for them. So, Pastor Scobey, it has been great to be with you. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for joining us on the 1,000 Stories podcast.
Thank you.